which is very not
spring. Yes, let's talk
very
about
not
it.
spring. So, well, it's not spring, but it is timely. Let me get my script up. So we are being wary of the Ides of March. It is March. The Ides have passed, but
We made
I
it.
wanted we made it. We made it through. But I wanted to pay homage to that and do our little Shakespeare Caesar assassination scene.
Yeah.
So this is such a fun scene because depending on how you do it, like the staging of it is obviously so crucial. And I'll talk once you kind of start going, I'll talk about how I did it when I directed it. But it's just this like ramping up of voices and people and stress. And basically they're asking, the conspirators, the senators are asking for Caesar to pardon someone. They're saying, please change your mind. Please, my brother has been banished. Please repeal that. That is, I should add it to the stream. That would be helpful as I'm like talking about it.
You're good.
So yeah, Metellus Cimber says, is there no voice more worthy than my own to sound more sweetly in great Caesar's ear for the repealing of my banished brother? Brutus kneels and says, I kiss thy hand, but not in flattery, Caesar, desiring thee that Publius Cimber may have an immediate freedom of repeal. And then we have this moment, and Caesar's back and forth and like, nah. And this what, Brutus? It starts this train of like, I feel like Brutus has always been on Caesar's side. He is the most logical, the most honorable of the senators. And so this is when I feel, after people have been appealing, through the whole thing, Caesar starts to feel a little overwhelmed. Cassius says, pardon, Caesar, Caesar, pardon. As low as to thy foot doth Cassius fall to beg enfranchisement for Publius Cimber. Then Caesar has this like really great speech, and it's his last one, so it better be good, right?
Yep.
I could well be moved if I were as you. If I could pray to move, prayers would move me. But I am constant as the northern star, of whose true fixed and resting quality there is no fellow in the firmament. The skies are painted with unnumbered sparks. They are all fire, and every one doth shine. But there's but one in all doth hold his place. So in the world 'tis furnished well with men, and men are flesh and blood and apprehensive. Yet in the number I do know but one that unassailable holds on his rank, unshaked of motion, and that I am he. Let me a little show in it, even in this, that I was constant, Cimber should be banished, and constant do remain to keep him so. We get, O Caesar, wilt thou lift up Olympus? Great Caesar, doth not Brutus bootless kneel? And then Casca comes in with speak hands for me. And then as Casca strikes, the others rise up, stab Caesar. Et tu, Brute, then fall Caesar. So
so I'm sorry. I think I knew this, but it still surprises me. He has a very fast death, which I feel is not expected, or not what I expect in Shakespeare. Which I don't know. I kind of like it. Not the death part, but I like how he did it.
Yeah. This whole season of Protest Too Much is all about death, which is like a wild choice on my part, but
there's
I committed.
A lot of it.
Commit to the bit, right?
Yeah.
But this is it happens surprisingly quickly. And we get this kind of like back and forth appealing. Caesar has this long speech. It's like, what? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 3 back and forths, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
So it does kind of come out of nowhere, and it's up to a director or an artist to be able to build that momentum. And I'm really, one of the reasons that I chose this is because I'm very excited to see how we've talked a lot about time and pace on this show, and I really am excited to see how you show that. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yep. So I'm going to reread through just kind of Caesar's speech, because when we talk about like, was this the right thing to do? is it better to stop a tyrant before they can become a tyrant? Or do you have to let someone prove that they're a tyrant before you take them out for it? You know?
Mm.
And so looking at his wording in this, to me, this is where Brutus really, really makes up his mind. Because I feel like Brutus is leading these conspirators. Cassius is the one pushing the buttons. Cassius is the one who's like, Caesar must die. But this, I think, to me, is where Brutus really feels peace with his about to be actions. Because Caesar says, I could well be moved if I were as you. If I could pray to move, prayers would move me, but I am constant as the northern star, of whose true, fixed, and resting quality there is no fellow in the firmament. So this indication of superiority is so strongly worded here. There is no, I could well be moved if I were as you. He really does remove himself from being a person. So he's looking around this room of senators and he's like, y'all can ask for Publius Cimber to come back, but like, you're allowed to change your minds. I'm not. I am here and you are all, silly little humans changing your minds all willy-nilly every day. He is strong and constant, and to him that's the sign of true leadership, which to me as Brutus says, if you can't change your mind with new information presented to you, it's about to get out of hand too quickly for anyone's safety.
Yeah.
And again, it's interpretation, right?
Yeah, but it's a beautiful setup because I feel like you have the conflict of, at least in the mindset of what it is like to be a divine king, to believe that you were, your lineage, you were chosen by God and your father's father and all of this to be the king and to be infallible. And you have to live up to that. But at the same time, being a good ruler means not maybe always doing that. And it's so good.
Yeah. And Caesar's not even a king. Caesar is a ruler. They try to crown him a couple seasons earlier, and he's like, no, I couldn't possibly be your king. Like, nah, no, you flatter me. And then he like faints in public or whatever.
He's certainly a drama king.
He is certainly a drama king. God dang. He is Caesar makes me so mad. When I got to this one on my Bechdel Wallace test series, I was just like, this play like doesn't even just not pass. It fails so spectacularly because the only two women in this play are Portia and Calpurnia. Portia is Brutus's wife. And I almost chose that scene, and I'll probably hold it for the future because it's really, really good. So Brutus is out in the middle of the night waiting for conspirators to come to his house and like plan to kill Caesar. And she comes out before anyone gets there, and she's like, what the hell, Brutus? You're wandering outside in the middle of the night. It's cold. You're going to get sick, and you won't tell me anything. So be a gosh darn man and tell me what's up. And he's like, oh, you wouldn't understand. You wouldn't even understand my troubles. And she's like, nah, bitch, absolutely not. No. She really like lays into him. It's such a good speech. And then Calpurnia, who is Caesar's wife, and she's like, hey, I had some really bad nightmares about you going to the Senate today. So can you please stay home? Like, tell them it was me who kept you home. Please just don't go. And he's like, what do you know, you dumb woman?
Oh, jeez.
Basically. Man, I would look. He almost listens to her. And then obviously the conspirators come in and they're like, oh, what would it be like if you were, caught listening to a woman? And he's like, yeah, you're right. Women are so dumb. You stupid wife. Stop having dreams. I'm going to be fine. Dear listener, he is not fine.
Spoilers.
So like the women are treated really horribly in this play. But I literally have no idea where I was going with that.
Bechdel Wallace test. That one failed spectacularly, I think. I don't know if there was another.
I know I had a point at the start of it, but that's fine. This is what you're getting today.
Oh my gosh.
In a long week.
Also terrible because I was completely like I was going along and I was listening, but I was also thinking about what I was going to do, and I was like, I have no idea what we were going to go to from there. It's fine. It's all fine.
Yeah, no idea. It's fine. Les Lemmy says Gaius Julius Caesar really wasn't the kingly type. I want to know what you mean by that because I am good at Shakespeare and bad at history. All of the history I know is from Shakespeare plays. And Shakespeare is like the Bridgerton of history, right? Shakespeare was like, oh, these people were actual. That's not Bridgerton. Bridgerton's all fake, but whatever.
But they are talking about scenarios and things that were real and people who really did live in a society that was guided by your public image and your chastity and the favor of the monarchy. Like those were real things and real people had to deal with them. So even though it is so elevated, I think it hits the amount that gossip could infect and impact. Oh, so good.
Speaking of that, the amount that gossip can impact and affect, that's basically, I feel like I've talked about it on this show before, but that was basically what I went with for Caesar because the mob mentality, someone drops something and then the whole crowd is like, that Swan is using the past tense. Yeah, I mean, yes, gossip and rumors still are heavily, but that's so.
Yeah, but when I look back, it's all like, oh, how cute and quaint they are with their pamphlets about gossip.
Right. But so that's why I
Twitter.
did for Caesar because everyone is like, oh, we love the conspirators because they killed Caesar because Brutus told us that that was the right thing to do. And then Antony comes out and he's like, yeah, that was real shitty. And the whole crowd is like, oh my God, yeah, it was. Let's kill the conspirators. So the way that people's minds en masse are swayed, I had a live Twitter feed up on a projector. We did like a punk kind of Caesar. And so it was a live Twitter feed and we were getting people to like tweet. And then that's like that. It's the same thing. Like Future Skeleton implies that is what's happening in real life. People will tweet something and then it's all of a sudden a shitstorm of something that nobody even knew was a big deal 5 minutes ago, but now is the only deal that anyone cares about. That kind of like drama and gossip and reputation. Okay.
Big thinking things happening.
Big thinking. Yeah. So last time he says he insisted that he was merely the first citizen and not a monarch or emperor. It's just a coincidence that the official title is dictator. Is it a coincidence? Or who knows? We don't get to find out because the opportunity to become a dictator was taken from him. Fun fact. This is a TikTok I saw a while ago, and I don't remember the outcome of it because I have ADHD and didn't even watch till the end because it was more than a 1-minute video. Someone went and did the math on how many hit points Caesar would have had based on the number of conspirators who used like a dagger and then giving like extra like proficiency to someone like Brutus or Cassius, like the higher level conspirators, and like trying to calculate how much damage Caesar would have taken.
Well, plus like you've got stealth, you've got the element of surprise, like if they get a sneak attack.
Yeah, I think that the first hit definitely had to be like a sneak attack bonus or a what's it called when you go before surprise round?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Either that or they just rolled really, really well. Oh, why can't I think of the literal thing that to start their rounds? Why?
Initiative.
Thank you. I'm like
initiation.
Brain. Also, I mean, he's got his armor class has to be really, really low because he's not wearing armor.
AC super low, but also like HP pretty high, right?
That's
for
true.
What did they say? 27 dresses. How many? I think it's something like 32 stab wounds or something. 60 conspirators. That's some. Oh, the
Jeez.
group stabbed Caesar reported 23 times.
23 times.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, 23 hits. 23 seems to be, I was close, 32, 27. That seems to be the consensus, is unsure of how many conspirators there actually were, but that was like the planning process. There was another meme or something that was like the stabbing of Julius Caesar it was the first group project where not everyone contributed or whatever.
Oh god, it's so bad and so good. I love it.
So
I mean,
yes, future skeleton. That is a great question. Mike says you can stab something that has 0 HP unless does he talk after the stabs, and he sure does. He has this A2 Brute, then fall Caesar. And this line is so good. It's such a cool moment for an actor to get to play, because like, oh man, like it really sucks being stabbed so much, but like that's the one.
yeah.
There is a, here we go. Where is the thing? I should have had this up. The A2 Brute, like literal translation. So it literally means you too, child, but what Caesar may have intended by the words isn't clear. Tempest cites an important article by James Russell that has often been overlooked. Russell points out that the words Kai Su often appear on curse tablets, and it suggests that Caesar's putative last words were not the emotional parting declaration of a betrayed man to one he had once treated like a son, but more along the lines of "See you in hell, punk."
Ooh.
Yup. Which, since I read that, is the only way I can ever think about that line now. See you in hell, punk. So good.
I love
Hey,
it.
Brad.
What up? What up? Hi, everybody. Okay, so I had a question earlier, but like as we were talking about it, I think I kind of worked through it because I had an idea of setting and visuals that would look cool, but I think with this one I'm almost just going to go super classic on the nose, like Greek toga, because I don't know. I don't know if I just can't separate the text from that image in my head. But also, this is bad. So I'll tell you the rough idea I had that I thought would be really, really cool is setting it almost around Salem witch trials, but having it be all of the females and having them be accusatory towards the person who is a witch, and having her be like, no, that kind of, because it feels like that same heightened everybody, and then all of a sudden, as it's the mob mentality. It's we'll say second most famous mob BS.
Yeah.
But,
I think that's really interesting. It kind of like, it does mirror what I think is the intention of the pacing.
yeah,
I saw Goody Proctor with the devil. I saw Goody whatever with the devil.
Yeah, like I got that feel from it. But then I was like, oh, man, Caesar's such a dick. I kind of just want to keep him as a dude.
That's fair.
So what I think I'm going to go as far as like style inspiration, I'm going to lean more into the video game Hades and that way that the Greek gods were presented. So kind of lean into that a little bit more because I just love that art style. So, but yeah, like there was one of those I was like, oh, this could be really cool because then I could draw all of those, very specific Puritan outfits and all of that.
Yeah.
I was like,
oh, this is very cool. It does have that like Roman style of like the belted tunic.
Yep. but not necessarily full. Just
but it has an edge to it.
yeah. So
It's
I
got an
like
edge of biceps to it.
so many biceps.
I am surprised. I will say I'm surprised that you didn't put this in Regency. Period. Do a Regency. Oh yes, let's quite stab Caesar.
We should totally just stab Caesar, which is all I can think of. Yeah, I think that's because, and I don't think spoilers too much, but a little bit of spoilers for season 1 of Bridgerton. When I think of conflicts in this time, because it's a lot more fun to tell stories of the upper class in these, because if you were not wealthy in these times, life was really bad. And it doesn't mean that you can't have beautiful stories there, but I think it's hard and I think it is cruel to romanticize, the terrible conditions in London and the terrible class differences, because it wasn't easy being poor and you didn't have a lot of fun like the upper class did. So putting all of that aside, when I think of conflicts in this, there's so much proper and stance and duels and either fencing or, it's a one-on-one thing. Whereas there is something so primal about a mob and a mob attack. Like, I couldn't marry those two in my head. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey Fruit Nut, I don't know how you ended up here either, but we're happy to have you.
yeah.
I'm happy that you're here. We're doing Act 3, Scene 1 of Julius Caesar today. So the infamous assassination scene. And I mean, I'm sure that like the real historical thing was less dramatic. Well, I don't know how much less dramatic it can be. It's like it's a pretty dramatic moment.
Yeah.
But less poetic in the way that it ramps up pacing. Like who knows? Obviously, who knows what happened? No one knows. But thinking about the way that this scene really builds, it's such art to me, the way that Shakespeare can use these words and these lines and these shared lines, because that's something that let's see, is really interesting as well. Something that is a tool that Shakespeare uses not super often, but enough to be a thing. So we've got something called a shared line. Caesar says, "What, Brutus?" And then Cassius finishes his line, "Pardon, Caesar, Caesar, pardon." So you've got "What, Brutus, pardon, Caesar, Caesar, pardon." It's an extra syllable, but it's fine. But you still have that iambic pentameter line.
Mm-hmm.
It's just shared between two characters. You have it again. "O Caesar, hence wilt thou lift up Olympus? Great Caesar, doth not Brutus bootless kneel? Speak hands for me," and then the rest of it. So Caesar finishes everyone's lines. He cuts them off, but also is like resolving the line of iambic pentameter at the same time. So the way that you have two people sharing that iambic pentameter line makes the pace so much faster naturally.
Yeah.
It's one person talking and you can kind of get into a rhythm, whether you intend to or not. But once you've got people overlapping and sharing those lines of dialogue, it starts to really, really speed things up. And that's one of my favorite things about this scene, and how it becomes a little overwhelming pace wise, right up to the stabs.
I think this is funny because I have had people say this when it comes to art, but just as I want you all to know that it works the same way. So it is magic to me that just by language that you use and having him finish that you actually increase the pace of something just by the word choice. Like, that is something so beyond, like, I don't understand how you did that because I feel it. And so it's funny to me because from the art side, it makes complete sense. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what you would do to pace it. And again, I know if I just practiced, I would probably be able to do that in writing. But it's very cool to me because I'm like, I didn't even know it was necessarily happening, but I felt it.
Yeah.
So that's very cool.
Yeah, it's something that is just, it's one of those tools that you don't even know it's tricking your brain, but it is tricking your brain.
Yeah. Sneaky.
And excuse me. Um additionally with that, we get a lot of, in these last few lines, we get a lot of single syllable words, which I believe we've talked about in the past as well, but those single syllable words really speed up the pace as well. So we've got names, we've got Caesar and Brutus, and those are really the only double syllables that happen in these last few moments. So it just really like hammer in that pacing.
I love it.
Yeah, Shakespeare is a pretty cool guy. Actually, I don't know that. He might not have been a cool guy. He might have been a real butthole, but he was a pretty cool writer.
Yeah.
I will.
Not gonna lie, I completely blame that episode of Doctor Who, and that is always the Shakespeare I have in my brain. Not Shakespeare in Love, which all of those actors did a fine job. Also, I'm sorry, this is a callback to yesterday's stream where you were talking about how Ben Affleck doesn't have a period face, and I was like, yes, because he felt, for many reasons, but he felt so out of place in Shakespeare in Love.
Did he? Oh, you mean to a viewer, to you?
Yeah, like I thought he did a fine job, but there's just something about, like, it was exactly what you said. Like, no, this man has held a cell phone. He has read an email. He just, I don't know what it is and why I can't remove that from my brain and let him be in Shakespeare. But
are you a lady, Mr. Kent? It's my favorite part of the movie.
Oh gosh. But yeah, so I definitely go Doctor Who Shakespeare over the Fiennes brother. But
yeah, it's Joseph Fiennes is the one who plays Shakespeare.
I don't know. I know it's not Ralph.
No, I got to see Ralph as Prosper in The Tempest when I lived in London. It was very cool. Yeah, it is Joseph.
Okay.
Joseph. It's such a good movie. It's one of those things that it's like I love. It's the Shakespeare of Shakespeare's life, because it is wildly dramatized. All of the scenes are fictionalized, but it still is real people who really existed. So the same thing that he did with all of his kings and all of those kinds of characters that really existed and made them sensationalized and fictionalized versions. I think that it's really on a kind of meta level, a really clever way to do a movie like that.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to be like historical about it.
Which I think, and I am very grateful because the English teachers I had in high school, the teacher that I had that taught Shakespeare, did an incredible job. But I wish it could have been distilled down so simply, because I still felt like as we were watching it, one, it was weird because it's sexy to watch with a whole classroom full of other teenagers.
You watched Shakespeare in Love?
Yeah, we watched it.
Woo!
I know.
I was like, in that movie,
but it's so uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to be watching this with 30 other students. This is weird.
Oh,
but
that's amazing.
I felt like there was an expectation of us, like, you were really supposed to get something from it. And I think that was the wrong way to go into. Yeah, and I don't know why.
Maybe it was like, maybe it was because your teacher wanted you. Did you watch it before you like read a play or whatever?
I think so.
Yeah, maybe your teacher wanted you to just like Shakespeare and think he's cool, and then was trying to justify it. Like maybe they got nervous about it, the fact that it is not educational value, whatever that means. Because I think that just kind of like being inspired to think Shakespeare was cool is enough educational value for a Shakespeare unit. But a lot of teachers try to like justify why they're showing movies.
Yeah.
So
nope, that's fair.
Maybe that was the problem, is that they like had it as a good idea, and then got nervous.
Yeah. That's funny.
Oh, it's so good though. Is that isn't cinema?
I think the teacher talking about the movie.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, art. High cinema art.
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 Oh, oh gosh.
My favorite thing is to refer to like absolute trash, um, like shit posting or whatever as art. Um, because I think the term gets thrown around a lot. I mean, we've had this conversation that anything is art, but like thrown around as like a tool for gatekeeping or pretension or whatever, like high art. So I just love referring to like someone posing with a hot dog, which happened in our soccer uh trying to recreate a picture taken of a man shoving a hot dog in his face, as like highbrow art.
Nope, I love it. Jeff said it last night during our stream. He said, did it elicit an emotion? Then it's art. I love it because after we had just spent half an hour drawing dicks. So
I was gonna say, was that before or after the really
oh god,
hairy dick?
so many.
So
But I love it because I went over to the channel and it was playing the most recent thing you've streamed, and I was just like, I'm so sorry, Josh, that this is not what's on your preview screen of your channel.
oh no.
Thank you for letting us come and just deface your channel with our art.
PG-13, baby.
Yeah. Too much fun.
Too much fun. Is that a little laurel wreath I see?
It is, because there's something, again, coming back to my inspiration for the visuals. I love the way that the characters in Hades have the laurels on them, because they have so much more movement to them. They feel bigger and more exaggerated and more cartoony, which I just really like. So yeah, I think this one is coming from, like many things, I have singular moments of panels that I want in this. And so then I'm building backwards from that. And I love this idea of a really, really stark moment where, let's see if I can do it really quick without messing up all my stuff. I want to have this whole chunk here, like all of this be in like gradient but darkness, and just have very video game-esque, where there's just this one like line of light that comes, and the ever so subtle look of another character behind him, where it's just this very intimate, very specific moment, and then the only thing you get is him falling to the ground, the crown falling, which I feel is a very easy visual to use, and a little bit of like blood splatter out of his mouth, and just having then I get to think, the last little bit of text down here where it says, A2, and then that's the last bit of that panel where it ends on him. Like, you don't actually see anymore. You don't need to see the violence. You just see this, like, you're getting, in my brain, you're getting the very last moment, his last breath of realization, and then you just cut, is my thought.
I like that a lot. And I think there's so much to be said for, well, you and Shakespeare agree, because so many of the deaths happen off stage. And then we either, so like Mercutio is brought off stage to die. Lady Macbeth off stage. Falstaff, one of the biggest, most alive characters in the entire canon, off stage. Like, so many of these moments we don't get to see. And this is a very rare one that we do. So like, we do get to see this death, and it is very gruesome. And so it's surprising that it's the one that is so graphically like on stage.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that a lot of like intensity comes from not being able to see it and having to like make it up in your head.
Yeah, so that's, again, I am not a horror person at all. I don't enjoy there is one horror author that we talked about that I actually like reading, but I would say he tiptoes to the precipice of horror and then like gently brings you back, and it's fine, and it's more suspense.
That's the Stephen King son,
Joe Hill. Yeah.
Joe Hill.
So but he does beautiful things where he builds tension in moments. So saying all that, I don't like to watch horror movies. I don't like to read other horror books, but something that I know is so powerful that really in my brain separates genre of horror, where you have essentially what is just the torture porn, where it's gruesome and it's gore, and it's the shocking thing is the visuals, not necessarily like you've pushed it so far that the acts that are happening on screen are horrific, but it's just the fact that you're showing all of it. And the thing that I find that much more scary than on the other is the not showing it, either just hearing the sounds or tiptoeing your audience right up to it and then not showing them, because your imagination will then take it from there. And to me, that's so much scarier because I can't stop my imagination from going into it. So I think that's partially why I don't enjoy it that much, because I'm like, no, I can't turn it off. It doesn't go away. Like, you led me here and now that's where my brain is. So I love that as a storytelling element, because sometimes what I'm not drawing can end up being more powerful. Like you can work yourself more into the scene because you're trying to like, okay, what would happen, or how would this feel? And yeah, I just like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. And it helps you like it helps you move at the pace that you're already on a train of. Like you're not waiting for the artist to fill in the blanks. You're just like letting yourself kind of like roll through it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of pacing for something like this, do you put less in each panel to make kind of like when an author uses one syllable words to move the pace faster? Do you do like less in a panel? Or
for these, yes, for specifically this, because in my school of thought, in my how I lay out my pages, how I tell my stories, I think if I were to include a super detailed background in this scene, it doesn't do anything except for take away where I want the focus. So if I darken, essentially darken the stage, if I turn off all the lights and the only thing that's on is a spotlight on the main characters, you're not looking anywhere else. You're not focused on anything else that might be on that scene. And part of it, I think, is because I have ADHD. So you're like, no, tell me exactly where to look so that I don't be like, I wonder what those extras are doing in the background to entertain themselves during this really long scene. So it is, I am eliminating anything else that might draw your eye because this is exactly where I want you to look. This doesn't need to be a big detailed scene because there's nothing else more important in this panel than what is happening between these two characters.
Yeah, I think that's really fun and interesting, and something that when I look at busy panels, I will spend so much time, and it takes me so long it either takes me zero time because I'm not really looking at anything, or too much time. There's not really, I haven't figured out the good in between yet. Because
just like you were saying with the language, how do I want to kind of subconsciously bring you to the moment that I'm pushing you towards? How do I want to visually draw your eye to a certain point on the page? And yeah, I think by literally eliminating more stuff, the less is more on this one.
Yeah, less is definitely more, even though this scene is so crowded with people.
Yeah.
There are so many people in it, so many people on stage. And so much chaos happening for something that it like feels very intimate. Like there are people and words and actions and stabbing and all of that, but like it is a really personal thing that they're doing, and so it should also feel like intimate in a way, which is a hard balance to capture. And lighting, I think, is massively important in that.
Yeah. So I like, and like I said, because I had those two specific panels in mind as I work back, it's how do I build additional tension? How do I make this even more impactful? So my thought is, I think I can't decide if I want 2 or 3 here. I want these 3, this one, and this one. I want them to feel busy and packed. I
Mm-hmm.
want them, and even like in this one, to have, silhouettes of heads. And I want this very oh my god, I cannot think of words today. I'm so sorry. Prideful moment where Caesar is, he is standing tall, he is standing firm in his decision, and he's kind of thinking he's hot shit because he said it and all of that. And so like you have the chaos of all of these people, all of this mass of people around him, and he is the one that has a little less light. A lot of them are in silhouette, but you've got just busyness and movement in these three, and then this moment of him feeling really heroic. And then I was trying to figure out, I think you saw me working on this, how do I give myself more space? I'm on the wrong thing. Yeah, there. More space between here and here, because I want a breath moment where he comes from being puffed up chest, proud, looking off, to he's still looking up, but now his complete countenance has changed. And
Yeah.
now everything has fallen away, and he's all of a sudden, he doesn't look strong in this panel. He doesn't look powerful. He looks stripped. And I wanted to literally create as much space in between those two things as I could. And that's
And
also
that's
why, go ahead.
go ahead.
That's why I wanted to start like dark here and ever so slightly, lighten it up as I got to the bottom, so that it's even more pulling your eye down to that part.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if that's why like his, head starts a quarter of the way down the panel or whatever. So it's not space, it's not like empty space on the page. It's not white space or blank space. It's has something, but like especially if it's super dark, your eye has to travel down.
Yeah, it is purposeful. This is the best way that I can slow you down for a moment till I get you to that moment.
Yeah, that's super cool. Also that last panel, I want to pull up.
Ooh.
This is from when I directed it, and it's such a similar like frame to have Frozen
Yeah.
that it's like blowing my mind a little bit, because just like to have that uh intention in your page, and to that for that to have been like what it was in real time is
Yeah.
really cool to me.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
It feels really fun to see that mirrored, and like to see the pose of defeat so translate so well in different mediums, because like
yes.
it's very clear what this man is feeling in this moment.
Yes.
And it's very clear in the art that that's also what has happened.
I
So
think
I think
that's
that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's such a great thing about visual storytelling. And when I teach kids and talk about comics, there is, when you're first learning, your brain says I have to narrate everything that I'm doing. I have to
Mhm.
tell the audience um exactly what's happening. And then the goal as you learn and get better is, how can I say this without any text? How can I say this just with the drawings that I have on the page? And I think that's a very cool thing to then see, students start to realize what they can show through their art, and not just from narrating the scene.
Yep. Future Skeleton says, I see a tab that says like in Solomon's Odyssey on that browser window. Yes. Yes, you do. I am yep. I no spoilers, but I'm really excited about it. I feel like I've learned so much from getting to read and edit Dennis's comics, in the same way that like I'm learning so much visually from you, Swan, about comics. I feel like I'm learning so much, because like what you say, and then I'm taking it that's in my brain when I'm reading uh Dennis's book for like pacing and timing and structure and all of those things, and then I'm taking all of those things that I've learned from just like research and then seeing them happen in real time in the stuff that you do. So it's been a cool year of like comic learning growth for me.
Yeah, I feel like you, and it's neat because I know Dennis, and I know he has a visual element to his storytelling, but I think he's writer first. And so it's always fun to me because I think we come at it from very different places, but there are elements that end up being exactly the same, which is super cool.
Yeah. I really like Dennis's stuff. I think that he has such a good he's so good at storytelling. And it's very cool to get to see, and it's cool to get to see what it starts at in a draft and then like what it ends up with final. And I think that it's a little hard for me because I'm like, his way of telling a story is so good that I'm like, I need to make sure that like I'm doing a good enough job uh giving feedback and edits and all of that, because I think it is really really it should be very very successful as a comic. So I want to like do a good enough job so that like uh yeah. Oh, that's nice. Mike says that even just seeing the growth of complexity in the questions that I ask about these pieces that you do is very neat. That it's clear that I've learned so much over the past year, which
Yay.
that is cool. I'm glad that it is. I always feel stupid.
Oh gosh, no. That
Because I feel like so much of the time, like I know what I want to ask, or I know what I'm seeing, or I think I know what I'm seeing, but I don't know how to like really put it into words.
Well, and I think it's there is something, and I think it comes from us both being educators. There is something really admirable about one willing to be vulnerable in front of other people and ask questions that you absolutely know other people have, but are too afraid to say because they are worried that it is too simplistic of a question, or it is something that, no, duh, clearly you would know this. And in my brain, it's always, but why would you know this? Have you spent, since 2011 working on learning the intricacies of comics and following tons of comic creators and seeing how they storytell and how it's different? Like, no. So it shouldn't be, something you just know. But what's cool and what I love seeing is, as we talk about it, you notice it in other things, and there is such a correlation between this and the staging that you do as a director, that they go hand in hand. And it's all of these things where you're like, no, I've been doing this, I just did it with real people and not with art, not with drawing.
Yeah. I mean, even just the light switch, like you basically have turned off the lights in the room and given one kind of spotlight, almost the same way that I cut the lights on stage and had one red spot in the center of the stage. It focuses your eye. It draws people's attention in. It's a dramatic shift. It changes the audience's mood immediately. You just all of a sudden feel differently and know where, obviously, where the scene is heading. If if you're coming to see Julius Caesar, it's likely that something like this is coming. But yeah, the way that you've made the room dark and given it one spotlight, it's the same. It's like the same way that I staged the scene, even though mine was like punk.
Yeah.
And yours is Roman. It's very cool.
It is very cool. And I think there's also learning from me. It's a whole thing about teaching is you truly understand something if you can teach it to somebody else. And it forces me to think very specifically about, why did you do that? Why did you want to set it this way? You knew you wanted to because it was a good reason, but what was the reason? And I like that thought exercise.
Yeah.
High school me is just rolling over right now. Be like, really? You like it? This extra work?
You like a thought exercise? Okay.
Sure. But it's
I don't believe you.
You're just lying, Emily. But
I mean, it's true. Cool. It's true that sometimes I think, oh, I want to do Caesar, but I want to do it punk rock, is an idea that came into my head. And then I had to sit and think about why. And there's a reason, like we as creators, like as artists, it's not just a random idea that pops into your head. I didn't just think, ooh, I like punk rock, because I don't. It's not something that I had. This was like 7 years ago that we did this, and I leaned very heavily on Mike for this show because we had a live band on stage. So I was like, hello, I need all of your music. Thank you. Tell me every song that you know that might have something to do with Caesar. But it came into my head, and then I had to like, not that anyone was going to question me, but like in order to feel good about it, I had to justify it. And it's easily justifiable. Like it makes sense. And I had the idea for a reason, like you said, but it is important to be able to.
Yeah. Because then I think it's important to me. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's important to me. So I will keep doing it. I didn't just do this because it was fashionable. Like, now, do I make choices because this is going to look really cool? Absolutely. But
yes,
for the basis of it, like, I just, yes, but it doesn't. I guess part of it is still, my people pleasing, because at the end of the day, I want someone to be like, oh, wow, she made this really cool choice because it was a really cool choice, not just because like that was going to be the visually cool thing. Like, but yeah, I need it to, in my brain, I need it to make sense of this is here for a reason and it looks cool because of that and because of the reason behind it. Like,
yes. Yeah, it looks cool because it looks cool. And here's the why.
Yeah.
Yep. I definitely I definitely get that. I had to do a lot of backwards justification when we did 90s Midsummer. We did 90s because I wanted to. That was literally like I did it backwards. I was like, everyone has 90s clothes. I like 90s music. This is a stupid thing that we're going to do with one rehearsal. Nobody's going to really care about the theme anyway. But then I had to be like, okay, there's this like dad who hangs out with the three young bros. Like, why? What what kind of like 90s teen movie justification is there for that? Like, there isn't one. It doesn't exist. There's no reason for it. But I had to kind of like backtrack for trying to give myself a sense of legitimacy in my own brain. Even though nobody was asking for it and nobody cared, it was important to me to like have.
Yep. Nope. All of this makes complete sense to me.
Yep. Because that was 100%. Hey, what if Claudio like came out to Creep by Radiohead and it was just playing in the background while he was, being a dodo?
Yep. I think it's very cool because knowing you, knowing Mike, and knowing how much music inspires you, like I can see the music part of it being like, no, this makes absolute sense because this is what it would be. And then working back like, okay, well, how do I actually make this a whole thing and not just like in this scene he has to come out to this song because that's what I have in my brain and it has to happen.
So I will tell you, I did that for a long time because when I started directing, I was not a good director. I had some ideas, but I still have a lot of room to grow. A lot of room to learn and improve. But I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm only doing it because nobody else will. That was the only reason I started directing. But Mumford and Sons took like one of their songs is all Much Ado lyrics. So
that's really cool.
Every show we did had a Mumford and Sons song in it, whether it was live or recorded or whatever. Because a lot of our shows have live music, because it's super important to me. And we were in a like community musical theater space, so those were the people that we had.
Yep.
And a lot of my planning process would revolve around the song that I had chosen. And a lot of my like directing moments, like we started Hamlet Act 2 with Broken Crown by Mumford and Sons. And we did like this montage thing of like actually getting to see Ophelia start to lose her mind. She took the box of things that Hamlet had thrown in her face and saw her like dad's body being carried across the stage. And like, we got to see her start to crack. We got to see Gertrude like have moments of like, what just happened? Like did my new husband really kill my old husband? Like, is this a thing that is happening in my life right now? Getting to see those character moments only happened because I wanted to use that song and I thought it fit really well.
I dig that.
And like, so a lot of my directing has basically been like, how can I use this one particular song to influence some of these moments? And then like, how if we're doing punk rock whatever, and Mumford and Sons is decidedly not punk rock, how do we use our band and the sounds that we have to make Mumford and Sons sound kind of punk rock? So a
so
lot of it
cool.
is kind of backwards design, but
Yeah. It would have been very cool. I would have loved to have seen these performances because the way you talk about them is just so cool.
I have a lot of, like I was saying at the beginning, I have a lot of like really amazing memories of these shows, and it's fun to get to talk about them, and it's fun to like get myself excited about them again, because it is a lot of hard work, and it can be really, especially after the last like 2 years, um really disheartening to think about like all the things we used to be able to do, and like, you know, me being in Austin and not New England anymore. There's a lot that goes into it that I just like haven't been very theater inspired lately, and it's nice to be reminded of the good parts.
Yeah.
The great parts. All right. Riddle me this.
Mm.
How, this is one of those questions that I feel like I know how to word, but like I don't want it to come across confusing. How do you know where the light comes from, and do you get to just change it whenever you want?
uh,
It's not like a I didn't mean it to sound like a judgment.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think that's why it's funny, and I'm definitely not laughing at your question. I'm laughing
Okay.
because if you watch, so I'll say, throw it out to anybody who maybe doesn't watch as much art YouTube as I do. But it's nice, and it's why I love Doodle Crew, because it's all of us artists together talking about things. Light source is a constant struggle.
Okay.
Because
So it's like a thing.
it is absolutely a thing. It is so much a thing. And it's when I was in college and I was learning 3D animation and 3D design, it's very cool because just like setting up Legos, if you were to put a lamp that was shining onto the Legos, you could do a stop motion animation and the lamp would keep your light source consistent. When it comes to completely hand-drawn art, you have to do that for yourself, but you have to remember. And so, I've seen Twitter users who have gone and there's one very specific one that I remember, and it was an X-Men page, and in one of the panels there is the most bonkers light source where you're like, it makes no sense because you clearly see the light coming from behind them, so they're kind of in silhouette, but then all of a sudden it's just like, what light source is illuminating this part? And I think it's just because it looks cool. The artist drew it because it looked cool. So it is fun
It's like
to laugh
the
at.
two sons of Lost, how they always make fun of Lost for like basically having two sons.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, none of this makes sense. It would never look like that. So it's very funny to me because it can be just such a ridiculous thing. And if you're not paying attention, I loved it. An artist talked about how he submitted a whole like 3-page spread that he had worked on, and then went back and really read the notes and the script he was given and realized that he had illustrated it and colored it completely during the daytime, and it was a nighttime scene. And so the art's still good, but you have to completely go back and do the coloring again because that's not the scene. And so it's an ongoing, you have to pay attention to it. Saying all of that, there is beautiful leeway with how accurate you have to be, because, and I love it because you'll see people who will take reference photos. And so if I were to, take this photo of my hand like this and draw it exactly as it was, it's going to look very weird to the viewer. It's not going to make sense. Whereas if I super exaggerate it and have, fingers going up a bit more than they would have actually gone, and like the pullback of my I'm obviously wearing black, so you can't see my shoulders and my arm, but by exaggerating that, I still get the viewer to understand what I'm trying to do, but I made it make more sense, even though it's not photorealistic. So lighting kind of works the same way.
Okay.
Whereas if you really need something to have different lighting, as long as you're not confusing the viewer, I think you have wiggle room to, obviously in this particular hit, you wouldn't actually have a bolt of light that went through it. But by doing so, I can now illuminate the side of this person's face where like so you can see them and know that they're back there, but you'd never have this harsh of shadow and still have the main character be fully illuminated. Like,
Right.
these just not how light actually works.
Right. Well, that's why that's why I was thinking about it during this specific panel, because you've got so much like mystery and shadow and darkness, but then like this beautiful pop of light, and like I like that because it's very theatrical to me, because you do get to just change the lighting in a scene. You do get to turn all of the lights off and focus a spotlight or whatever. You get to make those decisions. And I just didn't know if it works like that sometimes.
Absolutely. So I think, again, depending on the realism of the piece that you're doing, because I live a lot in fantasy and comics, and specifically fantasy in comics, and heightened realism, I will say, as a good way to describe it, I feel like I have room to play and not always follow the laws of physics exactly as they are written.
That's fair.
But it is also important, and it is an ongoing struggle, because it is important to understand how light works, because it helps to enhance your drawings. It helps
Know the
to
rule to
show
break it.
Yeah, it is exactly that. I appreciate when you can take all of my ramblings and be like, here's a simple thing of what you're trying to say. I'm like, yes, thank you. But yes, exactly that.
Interesting.
So yeah. Lighting is ridiculous. It's just it's so goofy.
I know at DragonCon, on our DragonCon panel, you were talking about the like 180 rule or the 360 rule or whatever it was, that you don't ever want to flip, or you don't ever want to.
You're trying to make sure that as you quote unquote move the camera, when you jump back and forth, you don't confuse the audience as to which side of the room the person is on. And it's usually, I think about it the most when I'm having two characters talk to each other. And it's why you'll have, if you have a scene where two are talking to each other, so say person A is usually on the left-hand side of the screen. When you cut to person B, they're on the right-hand side of the screen. Even though there's only one person on screen, if you both showed them on the left, there's a weird thing in your brain that happens. Or if you start them that way and then all of a sudden switch them, but have given no reason for the room to have moved, or all of a sudden it's like, wait, I don't understand why did that happen? So, and it's, again, it is one of those where, are there times when you can do that? Like, I feel like, just because we mentioned it recently, something like Memento as a movie, part of its concept is to confuse the viewer. So you can have these moments that are very disjointed, and it feeds into the feel of the movie and is purposeful. But if that's not your goal, then trying to keep the person, ideally the person is still watching the interaction happening, but they're not jumping back and forth through parts of the room.
Right. Yeah. Do you ever do like top down, like bird's eye sketches of what a room should look like, where the furniture is, where the door is, where the characters are, just so that like when you do take the camera up to like be looking at them, you have a reference?
Absolutely. Also, because I'm really bad at scenery. So yes, if I'm going to have a scene that's taking place, especially if the characters are moving throughout the room.
Yeah.
Also, distance. I need to think about how big the room is. So, if you're in a really tight and cozy bedroom, people are going to interact and move differently than if you're in a big ballroom. And so, like, those things. But yes, I will absolutely. It's nice too. So I've had a few stories that have been told throughout. So we will have times where the characters will leave the scene they're in, but then come back to a place. I don't remember. I remember what I was thinking in that moment, but I can go back to sketching Shakespeare episodes. I'm like, I don't remember what I was drawing here. So having a, like, this is the room, idiot. This is what it looks like. Here's how you can reference that and have it still look the same.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're trying to like, you can like look back at the art, but you might not remember like what you had thought was on the other side of the room or whatever.
Yep.
I think that's cool. Have you ever done like an Aaron Sorkin style walk and talk through the? Oh God, it sounds like a miserable.
It would be so hard in art. I'm trying to think if I have. I will say, at least for a lot of my stuff, there is movement to a point, and then the characters stop. So I don't think they necessarily keep moving. I wish I'd had a chance to have, because it's the handoff. It's the handoff for me where you have one character going, they talk to another character, and then you might either keep following the first character or jump to the second character, but then they go on to interact. Like, I would love to do that. I don't think I've ever done that, but that would be super, super fun. But it would be one of those where there'd be a ton of thumbnails, there'd be a ton of planning, and it then becomes so much more important to me to make sure that not only the costumes are different and unique, but the characters' faces, and that each character is unique. So I think Future X Skeleton makes a great point. The X-Men are great at it, and it's because you have recognizable characters. You can have Professor Xavier and Beast walking along a corridor. You can have other characters come in and talk to them, and then follow those characters into, combat and something like that. And it leads you through the X-Mansion, especially, in a very beautiful way. But you're utilizing characters that look very different and are very unique, and so it works really, really well.
Yeah, and Mike says, I can visualize a ton of panels of Professor X wheeling around the school for the gifted with so-and-so. And I can visualize all of those scenes from the movies, which I think is really interesting because I've never read the X-Men comics. I've only ever seen the first two of the,
That's
X-Men
all you need.
movies.
That
and Logan, which I'm not ready to talk about that yet. But yeah, a lot of those first two X-Men movies were like walk and talks or wheel and talks, and the only two made. It was the third one bad?
Yes.
Okay.
It was much like I feel that elements of Zack Snyder's DC cinematic universe missed the point of iconic characters. I feel like the third one just went off the rails.
I had the characters doing things that they wouldn't have done.
Yeah. And then then you just filmed it poorly or you directed it poorly. Like, okay.
What?
But yes, First Class was very cool. Days of Future Past was, it had its moments. That's a real tough concept to make work. Anything time travel and X-Men, it gets real wonky, but I didn't mind. I didn't mind Days of Future Past nearly as much as I minded the third. But I think it's very interesting for those specifically because if you go back and watch them now, they feel clunky. They feel rough. I think they're still gorgeous and amazing, but it's because I'm viewing them through the lens of 10 years of Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I truly, truly believe, you can come at me if you think I'm wrong, but I truly believe you don't get the epicness of the Marvel Cinematic Universe the way it is without those first two X-Men movies. Because they had to prove that superhero movies were more than what had been shown to that point. And the X-Men are great for that because they are an allegory to the outsiders. They are, marginalized people, and their stories resonate more than I think many other stories do. It's why they've been going for so long. So I love that as Marvel went on, the costumes got brighter. They got closer to the comics. And I love that even in those first X-Men movies, they make a jab at, what would you prefer, yellow spandex? Because it's literally what was in the comics. Like, you knew what the source material was, but I think you also had the wherewithal to say, if we just go full ham on a superhero movie with comic book specific costumes, no one is going to take us seriously, which is their own fault. But
yeah, of course.
This is what we have to do in order to make this make sense to people who haven't read the comics.
Kind of easing them into it and making them more accessible for entry.
Yep. So I have a lot of thoughts on that.
No, I love it. I love it.
I'm just like, I have feelings.
Yeah. I think that, wait, without Superman.
That's fair.
Which one was Superman Returns? I don't. Is this the one that I cried at? This is the one with. No. This isn't the one with Kevin Costner or whatever the hell.
But Lost Light, I'll tell you, Patrick Stewart could do anything. Like, he was just perfect and I so love, and I know it's not everybody's favorite and they had their issues and that's fine, but because Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are such incredible actors, the moments between Professor X and Magneto were just magic. They were so good. And they just, it's what we've said before. I know we've talked about it on In Addition, where it's the, you didn't treat this like a silly comic thing. You treated this as, you have one character who is a survivor of the Holocaust who thinks that all non-mutant life doesn't deserve to exist because they're the ones who punished him. And you have another person on the complete opposite side said, these people deserve to live just like we deserve to live. And those are really genuine, heavy concepts. The fact that they also happen to be said by people who have mutant powers doesn't negate that. And
right. So. Yeah. And they weren't even friends before X-Men. X-Men is what brought them together. And they're, like Lost Limey says, they have the most wholesome, beautiful, incredible friendship off camera, off stage. I would have paid so much money to see them in Waiting for Godot. Like that, I love them. I love their friendship. I love what they've done with their careers. And a lot of them, like, not a lot of them, but a lot of their success didn't come till much later in their lives, which is really a beautiful, like, obviously Ian McKellen was working for the RSC since he was, like, I don't know, born. Let's see if I'm right on that. Because I know his Macbeth was like the 70s. So his first credit, like Fringe Broadway is 67, and he is, how old is he?
But yes, even though I didn't enjoy the 2006 movie, and I love Brandon Routh. I thought he acted his butt off in that. Yeah, I felt like that was the closest thing to Christopher Reeve that we'd had to that point.
Sure.
So, I agree with that one is important too, to get to where we end up.
Yep. I going back, not to jump back 20 minutes, but what I wanted to say / ask about hallway scenes is, how do you account for the amount of time it takes to say the words that are in the panel versus the amount of distance jumped from their walking? Is that a thing that you think about?
Yes. Not as much as other things, though. Because I think I go back to one of the incredibly helpful things I was taught, I think in high school, when we were still doing like PowerPoint presentations and everything. And it was whenever you have text on a screen and you have a timed change, read the text out loud to ensure that you've given the audience enough time to read it to themselves. So because with comics, I can't determine how fast or slow someone is going to read the dialogue.
Right.
I'm not as worried if they've managed to say a lot of things in this very short like span of time. I'm okay with it because you know what it is? It is the rounds of combat in D&D. It's 6 seconds.
6 seconds?
Yeah, it's 6 seconds. It's that same type
Every
of thing.
6 seconds of combat is a half an hour on a podcast.
Yeah. So I think, at least for comics, that's kind of where I land with that one is, yes, if there is a countdown happening, then we kind of need to be mindful. You know, if you're traveling, like if we're flying or something is happening and something is about to explode, unless you're the Flash or someone like that who can move incredibly fit, you know, you do need to kind of figure that out. But talking is a free action. Yeah, I don't.
We do a lot of it. A lot of our combat is not combat at all.
Yeah, so I think that's, out of all of the things I'm considering, that's not as important to me because it doesn't have to be. I don't actually have to have actors say all of these words. I'm bound by how it's read.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of my like last follow-up question on that, because like I'm thinking of like, very like West Wing, like walking down a hallway that has portraits on the wall or whatever, and then like, how many portraits do you get to say this amount
Yep.
of things? And like I'm probably overthinking it, but I overthink everything.
Not at all. I think it's what ties in for how I am an artist and how I create is I was raised on repeating scrolling backgrounds a la Scooby-Doo and Flintstones,
Oh,
where Flintstones are walking through their house. Their house is 2 miles long because we have been walking through this same background for way too. So did it matter? It didn't. And it's kind of funny now. And so comics work very much the same for me in that unless there is some reason where that's going to pull you out of the story, I'm not too worried about it.
Yep, that makes sense. Can you do me a favor and scroll up?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm looking at, it strikes me how young Caesar feels.
Yeah.
In all of these. And I think it's a really cool way to see it.
I guess I should ask, how old is he during these moments?
What did I tell you at the top of this? Emily Swan. How old was Caesar when he died? 55. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I owe him a little bit of age.
No, you don't. Because we can do whatever we want. We can do whatever we want in Shakespeare.
One, he gives me big time short king energy.
Yeah.
Just to start that off. But also I guess okay, so what I'm realizing is, as far as a character goes, the divine right, the divine confidence strikes me as a king who is still young. Whereas I feel like if you have gotten to be ruler for a certain amount of time, even if you like, it's something with like Hamlet's uncle and that type of stuff, in their plotting, in their weight of their decisions, they feel older to me and not as impertinent or impetuous. Like,
yeah.
Versus Hamlet, who strikes me as very young. And I know we talked about it where he could be 30, he could be 16. He strikes me as young because I feel like you couldn't have, in this world where you have such a short lifespan, you couldn't have gotten to that point in your life without learning and without knowing better.
Yeah.
Unless you were an exiled king who came back and had only had people, fought. Like, I can't make that make sense in my brain for him to still be, unless you've kind of pushed it to the other extreme. And I think Lord of the Rings, where you have a mad king who has had one person talking in his ear for so long and he has just descended into craziness. But Caesar doesn't strike me as that malleable, crazy.
Or, yeah. So I do agree with this, that Future Skeleton says, is that it's cool to see him scared. The youth in that dark panel is a cool reflection of his naivety, or like misread of the situation. And that's kind of why because I felt like he felt older in the more statuesque, but like, and I can see the youthful pride in that panel as well. But like the fear coming out, like it makes it so much creepier. And then you've got like Peter Capaldi in the background ready to stab a bitch. Like, it just, I don't know why I think that character looks like Peter Capaldi, but
because he
that's
was in that Pompeii episode and I picture him in a toga, and he's also got a great face for art. So yes.
Yep. Mike, who are you talking about? Fireman from Survivor.
Fireman Tom.
Fireman. Yeah, Tom. Oh, you said Fireman Tom. That's on me reading. I was like, who are you talking about? If only you put the name of the person you were referring to directly on the screen.
Hey man, reading is hard sometimes.
Reading is hard sometimes. But yeah, he could be Fireman Tom from Survivor. It's a good point. It's really cool.
I think there's something about the biggest, strongest, toughest person doesn't matter, because when you're in your last grasping moments, you are weak, you are frail, you are, I don't know, you're stripped away in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the way that, like, he's almost using the toga as, like, that, like, place of pride, and it's very structured, and it feels very, like, purposeful in that. Like, you can see his muscles holding up the whatever,
Mhm.
and then it kind of, like, is falling so much looser in that second panel.
Yeah.
Like, it's dropped it. It's a very cool, way to take power away from him. Like, he looks like a child.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. I think it's really creepy. That guy's like a vampire. He's gonna bite his neck. Gonna go chomp. Ugh,
Yeah.
and that so I can see an E in the blood
Oh,
spatter.
in here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, there's me completely showing my ass because I never draw blood. So I'm just like, what do blood splatters look like? Why can't I make them look like blood splatter?
I
So
think blood spatter that spells out et tu Brute.
oh, that would be cool.
So when I thought it was an E, I was like, is that where she's going with
Oh,
it?
that would be cool.
But
all right.
and it is ET.
Et?
Et tu.
Okay.
Yep.
I was gonna again, this is why I draw and I don't spell.
The Canadian, eh? Eh?
Hey,
Eh, Brute?
Brute! That would have been a very different day.
Oh, Caesar, figure it out.
It's the Letterkenny version of it. Oh gosh. Okay, maybe we'll do a bonus to the same scene, how he could take it two different ways and just have all the guys in flannel and holding their beers and be like, what? He just gets
Getting
like
stabby boys.
stabby boys with like a broken off beer bottle.
A hockey stick snapped in half and a
Oh.
Oh man.
Oh god, I love it. I love it.
Strange brew. I don't know that.
Yes. Tell us more. Tell us more, Last Limey. Also, I love
Canadian
E,
Hamlet.
a true Coliseum story.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the best. I've never seen this. Hockey. Wait. To be or not to be, eh? Loose adaptation of Hamlet. Sounds like I have something to watch later on. Rick Moranis? Wait a minute.
What?
Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis' Strange Brew, 1983. Take off, you hoser. I am very excited to watch this. I did not know it existed. I have never heard of it before. I'm busy. Gotta go. Bye.
And we're done.
And goodbye. Gosh, I've got Pride and Prejudice to finish. I've got this new movie to watch. I have season 2 of Bridgerton to finish. I got a lot on my plate, y'all. I'm trying to finish that Brandon Sanderson novel. I read a whole other like 4 pages on it the other day. Getting there. I've got like 4 books I'm reading right now. Some of them are work. Some of them are like I've got a novel that I'm like keeping up with chapter by chapter for my students. I've got Dennis's book to edit. I've got Pride and Prejudice open. I've got Mistborn open. Maybe that's why I can't finish anything, is because I've I just have too many things. Which Brando Sando, the first Mistborn. I've been trying to read it for like a year because I really want to do a Mistborn cape for DragonCon, but I don't feel like I can do that unless I've actually read the book. So I gotta get my foundation ready to rock.
I have felt that way about some fan art pieces that I've wanted to draw where I'm just like, I don't feel like I can do this because like I really want to draw this character. I've never watched anything about, like I don't actually know anything about them. I just think they're cool and I want to draw them.
Honestly, I feel like that's fair. I don't know anything about them, but I think they look cool.
Yeah.
That's like we were saying earlier. Sometimes there are things that just look cool and you want to do them because of that.
Yeah.
But I think that's okay. That looks so badass.
I love this idea. So thank you so much for giving me that. And then I want Brute to actually be like text so it just feels so separate.
Yeah. I love it. I think that's so fun. This is a very it's there's like a movie genre that it feels it's like magical realism in a way, but that's not the right genre, it's not the right term for it. There's something very like supernatural about it though that I really love. Just like the way that the light changes, the way that just that like blood spatter spelling out words, like it almost feels like, I don't know. If you know the genre that I'm thinking about in my head, you let me know. Edgar Wright-y.
Ooh. Okay.
Did Edgar Wright do Scott Pilgrim? Because that's what.
Well, I think it's funny for the very specific visual storytelling that I was referencing. Hades, their whole style is all heavy black inks. Very Mike Mignola, so very Hellboy. That type of, yeah, like it just. Baby Driver,
so good.
So good.
Yeah.
I know there's problems, but much like Love Actually, I'm like, I just love it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think
comic style. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. But that's Scott Pilgrim was the thing that was kind of in the back of my mind. And Scott Pilgrim is magical realism, but I feel like there's more of a it doesn't capture exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, because it's still a little bit more silly, I think.
Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim.
Yep. Hot Fuzz also a gem.
So we talk about lighting, or I'm just like, oh yeah, so this would actually cast a shadow. If we're having, super dark circles on everything else, then the laurels need to cast it too. I'm sorry, I cut you off. But
no, I had literally nothing of note to contribute besides the fact that like I can't get over how dark my hair is.
It looks so good though.
No, it does. And it's my natural color. She didn't color the top.
Okay.
Like she just blended the color into the roots. And so I keep like doing this. Like putting the bottom up at the top because I'm looking at the bottom and I'm like, my hair is really that dark? And it really is. Like there's no difference. But like I forgot how dark my hair is with 4 months of highlights.
It changes
forgot
a person.
how it really, honestly, it does. Like I forgot how truly near to black my hair can be. I just thought it was interesting. That's where my brain's at right now.
You're good.
I love this piece, Swan.
I'm really happy with it. Like I was beating myself up because I don't want to say I went the easy route, but like I was having a lot of trouble pulling myself out of the Greek and Roman aesthetic. And I was just like, man, usually I feel like I can bring something that's, more turn it on its head and stuff like that. But I think in eliminating my thought process on costume and staging, it meant that I just got to lean into really stark visuals that pack a punch.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel like this went up as a complete page way faster.
Yeah.
Like it went up really, really fast. And it has like a ton of detail in it. It's not like a simple page by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. No, I felt this because I looked at the clock and I'm like, oh man, we must be going. I was like, that was only an hour. Like I had it pretty well laid out in an hour. Which
yes, it's very cool. I know, I love it. I think it's like a beautiful piece. And I think the red switching from like the blue purple to this red, it just
this felt a lot better. Which is so funny because again, not saying anything groundbreaking that color matters, but it's one of those where the color that I used shouldn't have taken away from the art, and I don't think it did. But I was like, it can't be blue. It just can't. This doesn't feel right. Whereas this darker, like, not a pretty bright happy red. Like this is a blood red.
It's a blood red. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you showed the picture of the red light, I was like, oh no, that just it makes sense.
Yeah. It is very cool.
I also liked there was something, I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. As I was going, and I think now that we've done enough of these, I usually really like the very specific borders to all of my panels and everything. And there was something where I just wanted this one to not have a specific, like, hard line outline on these. Like, I wanted the text to be able to float off into the nothingness down here. You know, I wanted to have this just complete openness of him looking up and being proud. And I just, yeah, I don't know. I liked that
the light comes in from the gutter.
Yeah. I love it. Makes me so happy. Yeah.
But yeah, the way that it like comes in and breaks that line is it enhances that kind of magical realism feeling that I was talking about. It kind of breaks the constraints of what it quote unquote should be.
Yeah. So early on, when I was still, I mean, I am still learning and there's still so much for me to learn, but I had a great interview with a writer who collaborated a lot with an artist that I really, really respected. So I loved the way they worked together. And it was very difficult to take in the moment, but he was looking at a page and he said, okay, why did you do it like this? Why did you make this shape? And I was like, well, this is kind of what I was thinking and everything, but it was just like we talked about before, you can make decisions that are based just solely on style, but you do need to kind of either, whether it's kind of a bullshit justification for it or just I really wanted to because I thought it'd look cool, or is there a reason for it? You know, I was leaving these panels open because that felt right, but then in going into thinking about it, I'm like, but why does it feel right? I was like, oh, it's because it gives me this feeling. And so I've always kept that with me of, you know, you did it this way. Why did you do it this way? Not as a negative, you made the wrong decision, just as a, what were you thinking and got you to this point? Because maybe if you follow that thread a little bit farther, you might then even end up in a better spot.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and kind of talks to what we were talking about earlier when we're trying to justify choices that we make before anyone even asks. Because to me, like you said, like, why did you do it that way automatically feels like you've done it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's on me to work through because I know it's usually not the intention. But I feel like I have to pre-prepare all of those answers just in case somebody does ask, so that I don't feel attacked. I feel proud of the way that I'm thinking
and excited to tell them the cool thing behind it. Like that's where I'm getting to now, where I'm just like, oh no, like I was thinking this and I was thinking this. Is someone ever going to actually ask? Probably not. No. Probably not. And, you know, I still have those moments where I second guess myself because I'm like, it sounds like every overinflated artistic response to like, well, why did you do this? I'm like, well, when you're thinking of it like this. And I'm like, it wasn't that. I'm so genuinely excited about how I got to this point that I want to tell you that. Not that I need you to believe it's more art than it is. I'm like, no, I'm just excited.
Yep. Yeah. And I love that. And I love thinking about the why did you do it this way as like a road to like finding more things that you could tease out of it. If you like trace that line of thinking back to the beginning, then you can see what other paths might open up. And I think that's a really cool perspective to have on it.
Yeah. This was fun.
This was fun. Thanks y'all for being here. I like really, really love it. It is visually so stunning and so cool. And you don't even, you know what it is. It's like immediately recognizable. Very cool. Trey, cool, Swan.
Oh, this is so fun. Thank you. Thank you for letting me tackle the Ides of March.
Happy Ides of March, everyone.
Yeah. Don't get stabbed.
Please don't. Okay, goodbye. We will be back next month. So likely the 24th. Oh. On the 23rd of April, Shakespeare's birthday. Ooh. I'm going to be running a 5K.
Oh my goodness.
Ask me how that training's going. It's not. Um, and then so if I am I'll be fine. I can sit down for the whole thing. On the 24th, I think is maybe when we'll be back. We'll take a look at our schedules and we'll tweet it out and everything. But if you have suggestions for scenes for us to tackle, please send them along. Follow Doodle Crew for more Swan art. Follow P2M Pod for more Shakespeare rambling. And we'll see y'all next month.